Today, we are going to talk about the importance of institution building. I think you've seen some kind of a renaissance happening within the Hindu space. And that is why we are under attack. Because the forces that know and that have studied the strength of the Hindu narrative are actually alarmed. So today I have Dr. Kalyan Viswanathan of the Hindu University of America. He heads the Hindu University of America. And of course, as usual, if it's Wednesday, it's got to be Vibhuti Jha. So there we go. We go in straight to the topic. And please do go to our description and follow us on our social media handles and press the link for support and do whatever you can. Namaste to all viewers and welcome Dr. Kalyan Viswanathan and Shri Vibhuti Jha.
Actually, Sanjay ji, if I may interrupt, I am also Shri Kalyan Viswanathan, not yet Dr. Kalyan Viswanathan. Okay, not yet.
Okay.
I'm working on it.
Shri Kalyan Viswanathan, I'm corrected. But Shri Vibhuti Jha has a special connotation because this Wednesday 10 p.m. show is always with Shri Vibhuti Jha. So when I put not just Shri, but when I say Shri Vibhuti Jha, it has a special ring to it.
I join in the ring. In every sense of the term.
On that lighter note, let me come straight to the point, Kalyanji. I think you have this wonderful initiative called the Hindu University of America, and that too in California. I think we have been talking a lot about the Hindu issues. There is some sort of Hindu renaissance, at least in the social media space. We see a bit of it happening in the academic space as well. But there has been very little of what we call very firm and focused institution building.
Right.
You have attempted this, and of course, the word Hindu to a university, I think it's only the second time I'm hearing after Banaras Hindu universities. Please correct me if I am wrong, whether this is the first instance after Banaras Hindu University of a Hindu university coming into being. And why did you go for this initiative?
Well, first of all, this university was established in 1993 and authorized by the state of Florida in the United States of America. And it was inspired by one Swami Tilak, who was part of the Vishwa Hindu Parishad of America organization. Okay, so it has a little bit of history. It's been around for 30 years now, almost 30 years. Now, but it has gone through a lot of ups and downs in the sense that because of absence of sustained funding and sponsorship, a lot of transitions, the university has had some good times and some not so good times. But we are now in the process of revitalizing the university and setting it on a path of sustained growth, so that it can become not only a respectable, reputable, accredited institution in the United States of America, but also a global institution that can serve the Hindu community throughout the diaspora as well as in Bharat, to the extent it can be embraced in Bharat as well. So that's a brief initial statement on the university. So you mentioned California. Actually, the university is registered and authorized by the state of Florida. Now,
Okay.
we do intend to become authorized in multiple states in America, so we can have small campuses and centers in different places where there are densities of populations of the Hindu community. And of course, that can happen internationally also. I would say one more thing, Sanjay ji, that there is a center in Oxford called the Oxford Center for Hindu Studies, if you might remember. That came into being, maybe more than a decade ago, maybe 15 years ago, or 20 years ago or so. We also have a Center for Dharma Studies at the Graduate Theological Union in Berkeley, California, which is a small center. But you're correct. A whole university calling itself Hindu, a Hindu like the Hindu University of America, after Banaras Hindu University. This is probably a major effort. But we should not forget the numerous others that have come along the way. Hindu College, Hindu College. In fact, I'll tell a small story here. My own grandfather was involved in the creation of the Hindu College in Machilipatnam in Andhra Pradesh, which was an effort in the 1920s, 1930s to counter the missionary movement, when they set up a college there called Noble College, and the Hindus were very alarmed by Noble College, and they wanted to somehow counter it. They created Hindu College. You might remember that there is a Hindu college in Calcutta, which was started long ago. And I'm sure there are many small little colleges and institutions all over that call themselves Hindu. For example, there's a Hindu high school that I know of in Chennai, for example. But so we don't want to call ourselves only the second one, but it's an important initiative in the West, particularly the first one in America. That's for sure.
Right. Now, let me come to the second part of that question. You really think that institution building has lacked in the Hindu space?
Yeah, you see, what is fascinating is when I look at my own family history, right? When the Hindu college was founded in Machilipatnam in the 1920s and 30s in Andhra Pradesh, they embraced English education with a tremendous enthusiasm. And see, the effort was to retain our Hindu identity, but embrace Western ideas, Western concepts, Western science, Western technology as enthusiastically as possible. And that has been one of the characteristics of the institution building efforts of that era. And of course, post-independence, you know what happened, which is that our constitution itself, undermined the creation of programs of study centered on Hindu Dharma. It, in fact, eliminated it from the campuses, from the universities in substantial measure. So much so that the Hindu studies, the study of our own culture, civilization, our heritage, got marginalized. It went into the mathas, pitas, ashrams, some gurus here and there in the mountains. You had to go find it, go search for it. It was just removed from the mainstream. So, Hindu University of America is an effort to bring Hindu studies into the mainstream, not just in the margins, and to hopefully engage the mainstream narratives of the contemporary world, both West and East, and potentially to contribute Hindu thought in a meaningful, responsible way to the future of humanity. So all of those are important opportunities in front of the university.
Right. Okay. Vibhuti ji, you've been working this tirade against what is called Hindutva, and of course, with all its nuances. And we together have often felt that one of the instruments of undermining the Hindu-ness or Hindutva is the academia.
Right.
And academia is where we have to focus, at least in the West,
Right.
because because of our very acute mental colonization. I think a large number of students and large number of even parents still look up to the West to take their cues in doing their own bit. So how do you look at mm, the academia being influenced by measures such as these, and what do you think? What more we should be doing in terms of institution building?
As we both have talked about many times in the past, building an institution doesn't mean creating a physical structure. An institution means, as Kalyanji was saying, that his grandfather set up a Hindu college in Machilipattam. The point of the matter remains is that commitment is required. We are, as Kalyanji very astute, very succinctly put it, that we were open to embracing the Western and English education in our own way, in our own ways to learn things, whereas the West has not accepted, and our own universities have not accepted Sanskrit teaching. So the commitment is very important for us to recognize that if we do not do that, we will be swept away. And it's very heartening for me to know that sitting here in the United States, somebody started 30 years ago the concept of Hindu University of America. And, as Kalyanji mentioned, he has been on my show in the US, and we talked about this. What ails those efforts? And one of them is commitment to do that, commitment to fund, because money is required everywhere. Money is required for everything that we want to do. So one of the things that was missing out is commitment. The time frame in which the Hindu University of America floundered a bit or went through a tough time was because it did not have full-time people. And to the credit of Kalyanji here, I'm very proud to share with all our audiences that he gave up his lucrative IT, information technology or IT services career to take up the presidentship of the university in a leadership role and devote himself fully. And I know that in the last 2 years or so, they have made rapid progress. So this is the kind of thing that institution building requires: commitment, money, and resources, and the involvement of everybody. If we do not get involved, then it remains, to use the Hindi phrase, naam ke vaste kaam. That's where we have been hurt mostly. And this is where it is important that people like Kalyanji and his team and the people who are supporting it. But what fascinates me more is, and I would want Kalyanji to mention that one of the things that we identified was the famous phenomenon of India-born confused desis who were never taught the Hindu culture or the Hindu way of life, our own texts, our own Vedas, our Puranas, Gitas, and everything else. We were never taught about it. And the constitution made it impossible for Hindu-based institutions to flourish, whereas other minorities were allowed, as a result of which we suffered. So the first generation Indians who came here, they were Hindus in name only. Their children, our desire for them to accept and adapt to the way of life everywhere we were was great, but it also enabled us to forget our own culture. So India-born confused desis produced America-born confused desis, and we all are Hindus in name only. It's a global phenomenon. So, for example, in the Hindu University of America, which I'm sure Kalyanji will talk about it, there are several courses they are offering in Sanskrit language. There is a degree certification for Sanskrit language that you and I have talked about on this program several times, that if only Nehru had made Sanskrit the national language, we won't be here where we are today, talking a Tamilian, a Dilliwala, Rajasthani, and a Bihari talking in English in a globally interconnected world right now. So this is the part which I feel is the Hindu University of America is doing well, and academics. As my grandfather used to tell, a station master manages the train, a school teacher manages the mind, and that's where our mind has been absolutely circumcised actually, by adapting everything which we are not to our way of life and forgetting our way of life entirely. So, to that end, I'm very, very, very proud to say that Hindu University of America is moving forward. Sanskrit education, Gita education, Mahabharata education in Sanskrit too. And they started, based on my previous conversation, was that they started a joint program for parents and children to learn about Hinduism together.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes, yes, there is a certificate program where a lot of parents and children are doing the program together, so that it is not that it is for me alone to learn and my child need not learn, or only if the child goes for the program and I don't need to learn. No, we need to know more, because unless and until we are, to use the phrase, on the same page, we are perhaps reading different lines altogether. So that's where I will say.
Okay, let's ask Kalyan Viswanathan ji once again. Uh, we find actually that the boys and girls who are coming to the United States, and especially in the non-STEM courses, they are completely vulnerable to
Yeah.
brainwashing.
Right.
So, does does an institution like Hindu University of America help in countering that kind of a malaise in any manner?
Yeah. So that's a great question. You know, see, what we find here in the West is a very well-funded, well-developed academic ecosystem, right? Where not only are there a lot of scholarships available, financing available to go through your, say, master's or doctoral program in the humanities. Say, for example, in South Asian studies, which is the current incarnation of the academia, and so area studies, which got established right after the World War II in the U.S. I mean, nearly $1 billion went into creating area studies programs throughout the United States in various universities, because the US wanted to understand the world and the world's various regions and their vulnerabilities to becoming communist versus remaining capitalist, aligning with Russia versus aligning with US, and so on. Some of those motivations created the area studies programs, and we ended up with the South Asian studies program as a container for what goes on in the name of contemporary Hindu studies or India studies, etc. That ecosystem, which consists of programs in Harvard, in Yale, in Columbia, in Chicago, in Berkeley, in Austin, and on, creates a very nice opportunity for young students to graduate and find a job.
Right, right.
Yeah. So in confronting the creation of an institution like Hindu University of America, one of the questions that frequently comes up with our own well-meaning, wealthy Hindu donors is, what will these students do after they graduate? You follow? Where will they go? Will they get a
Right.
job in Columbia? Will they get a job in Harvard? Will they be accepted in Berkeley, and so on? Now, this is a very real and important question. Okay. Now, in the immediate future, we hope that the university will be able to make a real difference in terms of uh, generating writings, papers, academic journals, activities, academic work products, books, edited volumes, and so on, which serve to position a Hindu perspective. And so, therefore, we do expect that the Hindu University of America will make an important difference in engaging Western academia, particularly in correcting the misconceptions, misperceptions, which are being perpetuated through sheer repetition, and citations and so on and so forth. So that needs to be done, and we will do it. At the same time, the university cannot survive without an ecosystem around it. So therefore, this I see this university as the beginning of an effort to actually build a much larger, much more substantive ecosystem in which our graduates, the university graduates, can go and find teaching positions which are funded by our own community in many different mainstream universities. And when we are able to do that, then we will make a dent in what is going on. Because as you rightly pointed out, if a young kid from India comes and joins a humanities program in Columbia or Harvard or any of the mainstream universities, in the prestigious universities in the US, more likely than not, they will get a perspective about Hinduism that is entirely Western in character, which ends up denigrating Hindu Dharma, delegitimizing Hindu as a way of being in the world, dehumanizing the Hindus, and almost presenting a view that in order to become fully human and fully modern, fully contemporary, one has to not only relinquish one's association with Hindu Dharma, but one also has to become hostile to it. And then these youngsters who come and study in the West, who are utterly taken up by this ideological standpoint, easily become watchdogs for the Western academia. Watchdogs.
Okay.
So they just do all the barking, whereas the Western academia can sit in the background and having cultivated these people. So this is a problem, a serious problem, and I'm saying it rather harshly, but this is what's happening. And you cannot deny that this is the condition of the academia today.
So are you also running STEM courses?
No, we are not. So it's an very good question. See, the STEM is a very established area, very popular amongst the Indians, Hindus. We love STEM. My God, we love STEM, right? So to replicate the STEM under the banner of Hindu University of America, at least in my perspective, was not a significant priority. What we do want to do is offer Hindu courses on Hindu Dharma from HUA, Hindu University of America, that can be integrated relatively easily into STEM-based programs in other universities in the US and elsewhere and abroad, globally, through a simple mechanism of a credit transfer. That a young kid, who's enrolled in a computer science program or a electrical engineering program or an environmental engineering program, whatever it is, they may take 1, 2, 3, or 4 courses from Hindu University of America, transfer the credit into their program, and comfortably get a STEM degree while getting a little bit of Hindu background and foundations from Hindu University of America. My view has been that this is a better model than to try and replicate a STEM environment, which is going to be very expensive to do, to be able to effectively compete with the well-developed, sophisticated, well-funded STEM environments that are already present in many, many, many universities in the West.
Okay, so that point is well taken. So, Vibhuti, uh, you heard Kalyan Viswanathan. You are, of course, yourself into building some kind of an ecosystem. You think that having an academic university as a base and building a superstructure of the kind that we are trying to do by means of our Jaipur dialogues or other electronic initiatives, and that is a more effective way of doing it? Because I've seen this, a lot of American universities have these Hindu programs. They also have, I have this wonderful example of the Sanskrit department of Harvard University, headed by Sheldon Pollock, whose
Yeah,
only interest is to, sorry?
he's in Colombia. Sheldon Pollock is
Okay.
in Colombia.
Sorry,
The
Columbia.
Harvard the Sanskrit department is headed by Michael Whitson.
Okay, both of them.
Yeah.
Both of them completely, their major effort is to delegitimize the Indian traditions, the Sanskrit language as our sacred language, and completely try and secularize everything and divest it of its Hinduness. And that seems to be a problem because there isn't a dearth of Hindu departments or Sanskrit departments or many other departments that cater to what we call even history departments, for instance, South Asian history departments. But all of them have a singular focus of delegitimizing whatever is Hindu. So, in that kind of a hostile environment, Vibhuti ji, as an outsider, how do you think a Hindu university is going to make a difference?
This is a big question. This is the big elephant in the room. And how do we reclaim our lost spot? And as we all know that the Western education system is designed to delegitimize us. Nothing, this is no longer a secret either. They openly say that. And they are doing it surreptitiously, cutting us under the belly, as the saying goes. And that's the reason why we are facing an existential challenge. For the Hindu University of America, we have the unique advantage today, as I always say, that we have the advantage of the technology leap. And since most of the Indians are very finely tuned to STEM and STEM education and STEM mindset, we have to begin to learn how do we take advantage of that scenario. If we do not take advantage, just as we are taking the advantage of technology today, to have this conference, this call from 3 different places in live, we can offer these programs through Hindu University of America globally. And that's where I say that India and Hindus need to take advantage of the technology leap. We are no longer shackled under the old system of education. This is classroom. This can be a classroom, and we know people are doing it. So the question is, how do we create the relevance? A point which was very well stated earlier on, that what does it get us? What do we get in return? Because America has made that phrase very, very popular. What's in it for me? So if I do this, that's good. I know about myself, but does it get me a job? Does it get me this or that? And therefore, exploring the opportunity for linking and creating advantage is key for that. And for this particular thing also is important, is that we have to build our cloud. We have talked about this many times, and we know that. Kalyanji also knows that we Hindus are very respected. I say Hindus because most of the people who are successful in this part of the world, whether so many CEOs of global companies are all Hindus, essentially. They may say secular, but the point of the matter is that they are all essentially Hindus. Satya Nadella is Satya Nadella, right? Pichai is Sundar is Sundar. His name is Sundar. So the point which I'm trying to make is that we have to somewhere along the line seek, enroll, and mobilize that support. It's very critical. It is truly sad that while people of other faith are able to generate awesome amount of funds for their education, we we are not able to do that. And that's the challenge we face in terms of pure organizing ourselves with with the clout that we enjoy in the community worldwide. See, we are an immigrant community globally respected in every part of the world, no exceptions. Respect. We are not a law and order problem, whether due to our religion or due to our behavior and conduct, socially or otherwise. So we are an integral part of every country's communities. The question is, are we pulling our punch? And that's what is important to do that. So I'm hopeful, as I believe that technology and science has enabled us to drop so many mythias and so many misconceptions that exist, created by vested institutions and vested groups of people. We have to demolish them. They recently held a demolition of Hindutva in global setup. I'm saying let us demolish that itself. And that's what is important for us to do. And it's not going to be easy. It may not happen in my lifetime. Hopefully, it will happen in both your lifetimes, and if not earlier, that we are able to reestablish ourselves. And for us, technology is the key, science is the key. And we have to foster that ecosystem, the belief, the confidence that Shushruta did not need FRCS degree to be a surgeon. That's what is important for the world to know, that people here, I know that people who complete MRCP and FRCS, they think they became royal society members. But hey, Sushruta did not need it. Panini did not need it. We did not need Western endorsement to be what they are and what they gave the world. Let's reclaim those things one by one. It's available. Now we can convey that message truthfully, honestly, and with integrity and pride.
Right. Now, I pose the same question to Kalyanji with an additional remark. This Audrey Trushke, whenever she is asked as to what is her USP vis-a-vis India, the way she tries to represent India, she says, I have training. Look, I have training. There's a joke that I read. I think it was narrated by the then Acharya Rajneesh, who became Osho later. And he said that, just narrated an incident. Rather, incident means an imaginary kind of an incident. That Kabir happened to come down to this world just to see as to how people were doing with his teachings. And then he wandered into a class at Harvard where they were teaching Kabir. And they happened to recognize him. They gave him all the honors and seated him in the front row. And then the professor started teaching. When he started teaching, the Kabir objected. He said, no, this is not what I meant. So he was made to shut up by the professor. He said, look, you may be Kabir, but I have the doctorate. You don't have the training. You don't have the doctorate. You don't have the entitlement. You can't teach. Of course, we can always garden you. That's about all that we can do. You can even institute medals and you can institute courses in your name, but you can't teach. I'm sorry.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, clearly, right, the acquiring that PhD degree is an important threshold to meet to teach in a contemporary university, right? Now, In many ways, we Hindus have accepted Western standards, Western institutions, Western laws, Western constitutions, Western frameworks in many, many walks of life. We fully embraced the English language, for example. We've embraced Western inventions in computers, in electronics, like Vibhuti was saying. We have no problem embracing so many new ideas that have emerged from the West. Why not also embrace this threshold called acquiring a doctoral degree in Hindu studies, a doctor of theology on Hindu Dharma, a master's in divinity, in Hindu divinity, okay, and so on, which are titles well established in the West. So, for example, Harvard University, when it originally started, it was a Harvard College, which was a divinity school. It later became Harvard Divinity School, and it happily coexists amongst Harvard Business School, Harvard School of Medicine, Harvard Law School, and all other Harvard schools and colleges. So the presence of a divinity school as a major school in a consortium of schools that forms a university is not at all a problem in the West. So you have a Yale Divinity School, you have a Princeton Theological Seminary, which predates Princeton University. Now you have a Union Theological Seminary right opposite Columbia University in New York. You have a Graduate Theological Union that is right in the heart of the University of California, Berkeley campus. And University of California is a state university, a state-funded university. And the Graduate Theological Union is in that state-funded university. So, whatever way this dichotomy between science and religion, secular state and the religious world has been negotiated in the West, when that principle was imported into India, they deliberately amputated the concern for religious education from the constitutional framework. And they set in motion decades and decades of no funding, no framework, no movement, no momentum towards creating Hindu studies programs, theology programs, divinity programs, and so on. Now, in America, there is a category of university called divinity schools, theological schools. It's its own category, and they are authorized as such, and it's not a problem at all. So what we are doing is we're simply saying, well, if we have to meet a threshold, if Kabir has to meet a threshold called he has to get a PhD in order to teach, we have a framework, at least one place, one location, one environment, one platform where acquiring that PhD becomes possible. And that PhD will be an accredited PhD. It'll meet all the standards of academic rigor required in a contemporary framework. And I'm very confident that intellectually, spiritually, Hindus have the aptitude and the motivation and the capacity to acquire these PhD degrees. They will do it in a heartbeat. If only they can apply themselves to it. That's not the issue. The issue is obviously funding, like Vibhuti pointed out, to funding to create a university, and the funding to develop the ecosystem around that university that creates opportunities for new scholars, new doctoral people with PhDs to speak up, to write, to publish. And slowly, when we build a critical mass, the Hindu Renaissance will happen within the academic communities. And I believe it has to happen in Bharat also. In every, hundreds of Hindu studies programs, Hindu studies departments, and centers for Hindu studies must develop in India, in Bharat, within the framework of the current constitutional environment, with funding from within India, and unabashedly, without any embarrassment, our younger generation has to study Hinduism, has to study Hindu Dharma, and the Sanskritam as a language. Sanskrit has to be revived. We cannot become a nation that is just stitched together with English or Hindi. It is the Sanskritam. Sanskrit is the heart of the beating heart of the Hindu Dharma, Sanatana Dharma, and therefore it is only a beginning. What we are doing is one small measure in the West. We hope that it will become. I'll tell a little story. Um, my father was born in a small village near the great Brihadishwara temple in Tanjavur.
Okay, okay.
Small village, okay? It's a small
Yeah.
little village. But that mandir, I don't know if you have ever been to that mandir.
I've been to Brihadishwara temple, yes.
Brihadishwara temple.
Yes, I've
It
been.
is impossible to be struck by the sheer size of it, the presence of it, the magnificence of that mandir, And it has stood for 1,000 years already. And I have no doubt it will stand for many thousands of years more. And I often wonder, the people who built that mandir, more than 1,000 years ago, did they imagine a mandir that will last for several thousand years? Or is it a sort of an accident that it is still alive after 1,000 years? I suspect they fully imagined it. With every brick they laid, every stone they cut, they envisioned that a mandir that would last thousands and thousands of years. And that spirit of envisioning a culture, a civilization for thousands of years, if we can imbibe into ours, envisioning our own universities of today, these institutions should last 1,000 years or more and more, then we will have properly founded the emergence of these new kinds of institutions. And of course, it goes without saying that those of us amongst the Hindu community who feel for institution building, who want to participate, they must move into the creation of educational institutions, big and small, in the cause of Sanatana Dharma and Hindu Dharma all over the place.
Okay, yeah. There's a fundamental problem actually, that when you try and give the kind of degree titles that the Western theological institutions gave.
Mhm.
Actually, we need to emphasize as well that the frameworks are completely different.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Dharma operates in an experiential framework, and the religions, the dogmatic religions, they operate in an intellectual framework at their very best. Otherwise, mostly they are they are operating in a dogmatic framework.
Yeah.
So, and their best is just a product of intellect. And we know they do not even recognize that there is anything beyond intellect.
Yeah.
Whereas dharma, everything that you talk about, that entire dharma that comes out of something that is paravidya, beyond intellect.
Right.
So, if you give the kind of titles to the degrees that the Westerners give, would that really work out? Won't it create more confusion?
Not really, Sanjay. I believe that an authentic education in Hindu Dharma must be centered on Paravidya, what you call the yogic, experiential, the deeply spiritual dimension. It has to incorporate that. Okay, and at the same time, it has to have a scriptural, textual dimension, because our textual corpus is vast, is very vast. Now, the way the West reads our texts, whether it's Mahabharata, Ramayana, anything, Veda, Upanishad, Brahma Sutra, whatever, the way the West reads our text is they read it as a historical document that says something about the people who lived in those days, in those times. So they use the text to make commentary. So to use your own Kabir example, the person who is saying, you're not the expert, I am the expert on Kabir. Now, so you please sit there, I will explain Kabir to my students. What he's saying is, he or she is saying essentially is, Kabir is a historical figure. He said some things, and I'm going to explain to you what Kabir said at the time at which he said it, in the historical milieu and circumstances in which he said it, and I'm going to give you a hypothesis on why he said it, and what motivated him to say it, and there I will weave my own theory about Kabir. I'm going to give you a theory about Kabir. That's what they are saying. They are historicizing Kabir in that example. Now you can replace Kabir with Mahabharata, with Veda, with Upanishad, etc., etc. Now that's exactly what Audrey Truschke is doing. She says, I'm only historicizing the Hindus. That's part of my method, my training. On the other hand, we want to read the same text, the same textual corpus, not historically, but philosophically. And we want to critique the historical reading for what it is contributing and what it is not contributing and how it is distorting the contemporary present moment understanding, the philosophical, ontological understanding of what those texts are trying to say today for our contemporary humanity and for the future of humanity. So that's a different way of reading. And as you rightly said, it's a different paradigm, entirely different framework, a different cosmology. So the contrast between the two cosmologies, the two paradigms, is at the heart of our Hindu studies curriculum. So it involves within that curriculum a full critique of the Western cosmology. So to kind of wrap up this thing, if the West can study India through area studies, why can't Hindus study the West and study the Western theology, Western philosophy, Western epistemology, Western methods, Western historicism, and so on? So a great part of the Hindu studies curriculum at Hindu University of America is this reversal of the gaze and taking a very deep look at the West, which is looking at the Enlightenment, looking at Reformation, the era of Reformation, looking at Protestant Christianity, looking at Catholicism, looking at Islam, looking at Judaism, and looking at the ideologies of our contemporary era: capitalism, communism, socialism. You can add Trumpism to that mix now, and on and
Okay.
on. So the paradigms, right? The intellectual approach has to contrast the paradigms, and if we do that well, it can actually help in recovering our own cosmology, our own paradigm, which is definitely much more metaphysical, philosophical, and very sophisticated in comparison to the West. So when a student goes through all of this, the major barrier that they have to overcome is that Hinduism belongs to the past of humanity, not to the present or its future. Hinduism must be bracketed into some bucket called religion, which it is not. It has got dimensions of religion as the West understands religion, but it exceeds those dimensions. It's a culture, it's a civilization, it has engendered arts, and there is so much to study and engage with within the Hindu world. And the Adhyatmika dimension that you are expressing is at the heart of the curriculum at Hindu University of America, and that's the whole effort. So it's the how do you appropriate the degree titles: Doctor of Theology, Doctor of Divinity, Doctor of Philosophy, etc., PhD, while retaining the full measure of our Adhyatmic understanding of our own texts, traditions, culture, civilization, ontology, experiential learning, everything that you've said. That is the endeavor that Hindu University of America is undertaking.
Thank you for this wonderful explanation. And I give the last word to Vibhuti ji, who's been sitting quiet for quite some time.
No. This show is for awakening us Hindus to understand our own history,
Yeah.
and we have kind of given up on that because we embrace the Western part of it. So think about the temple architecture of India that Kalyanji was talking about. I mean, it's mind-boggling. None of them had engineering degrees, did they? As the West prescribes, there was no PhD there. There was no MBA there. No Ivy League guy directing or supervising the construction of temple. But think about it from this perspective, that we have to instill that sense of pride in us, that we had all of it without any Western education. So when people talk about English, or the English gave us the gift of the language and weave the country together, they forget a very simple historical truth, that India was known as a golden bird. It had 26% of the world trade, and that too without English. So as Kalyanji said, I'm here by volunteering along with him, that Bihari from Hindi speaking Bihari from Bihar, and Kalyanji, a Tamilian from Tamil Nadu, we will embrace Sanskrit as a national language. We will have no dispute on that. So the point of the matter remains is that we have to begin, go back to Swami Vivekananda's call, arise, awaken, and assert. And to that, I have added Vibhuti Jha's fourth A to that is act. Sitting, just being satisfied that we were that great in the past, and that Sanatana Dharma will not die and it will live forever, which is true. Sanatana principles will live forever. That's why they are eternal. My question is that will it live in India or will it live elsewhere? Because in India, we are getting circumcised. The invasion of Hindu philosophy is happening by what you call balkanizing us. Pockets, Kashmir, our Sharda Peeth is no longer Hindu. Think about it from that point of view. We have to begin to think about it. And we have the opportunity with our mind of science and technology to take advantage of the technology leap. I'll repeat that. All the people who are watching today or they are not watching today, it is for us. This program is for them. What did you learn from here today to do? And that's the act part, which is very important. These are my last words. It's time. For too long we have been lotus eaters, embracing everybody. I mean, it is truly sad from my perspective that a mandated belief system called Christianity and Islam talks about freedom. And we are a truly free country, free faith, and we are being attacked by them as if we are the minority abusers. Go figure this out.
Well, we are the fascists, no?
Exactly. We are the fascists. So, I have asked this question to my Muslim and Christian friends, that do you really have freedom of religion? Are you really free? Because if you believe in only one part of the life, that religious doctrine, that Jesus is the only way, then the freedom of religion doesn't exist. So on that note, I would say it's time for us to act, knowing what we know.
Sure. I think sometime we need to discuss this sanctity attached to degrees also. I think
Yes.
one of those talks that Mr. Jayant Kalawar had referred to it, how the West actually created these knowledge monopolies. The degree is actually a creation of that system. I remember I did a degree in marine engineering, and I went on board ship, and I went down to the engine room on my day one, and I was actually supposed to supervise a guy, a fitter, who was not an officer. Who's on the ship is called a petty officer, and I realized within the first 1 hour that I knew nothing. And then that engineering degree, just had the humility to cast away the degree and learn everything from the scratch from him. That's how I learned my ship engineering, marine engineering. So this all this swagger about having degrees, I don't know how far it is.
Yeah.
But of course, that is the system. So let's move to the questions from the audience now. Before that, I request everybody to please like the video, also to share the video around as much as you can, and go down to our description where our support link and our follow links are located.
Press the bell icon on YouTube and don't miss another update.
Sorry for getting distracted, but the dhyeya of Hindu University of America is Sa Vidya Ya Vimuktaye. What lakar is being used for Vimuktaye? If you can please clarify, can't find it anywhere. Well, I'll recite to you the entire sutra. It's Yat Karma Tannanibadnat Sa Vidya Ya Vimuktaye. And it is Vedic Sanskrit. It is not bound by the rules of grammar of Panini. I hope I'm right, Kalyanji.
Yeah, it is, that verse is attributed to the Vishnu Purana. Yat karma,
Tannanibadnat.
na bandha. It doesn't create. That is karma, which does not bind, which does not create bandha. And that is knowledge. That is knowledge that liberates.
Oh, actually, he's talking about the lakar, what is called. So please differentiate between the mother Sanskrit, the Vedic Sanskrit, and the daughter Sanskrit, which is the classical Sanskrit that we have today. Next. Infidel Insight. Do you think initiating panchangs pertaining to US geography will help Americans to understand and embrace Sanatana in practice more effectively? Very interesting question, though.
Yeah,
It is.
Maybe in pockets, we must recognize that many Americans are embracing Hindu ideas and Hindu thought, especially through the window of yoga, through the door of yoga. And they may begin with just doing yoga as asanas and pranayama only. But yoga being what it is, it slowly leads them in the direction of, pratyahara, dharana, and so on and so forth. But that is
the higher calling.
Higher calling. So there is a growing community in the West who might be more comfortable calling themselves spiritual but not religious. SBNR. It's called SBNR, spiritual but not religious. And there is a foundation here in the West in the US called the Pew Research Forum, which performs surveys of Americans periodically, and they keep reporting that the fastest growing segment in the United States of America, a population, is a spiritual but not religious segment. So they embrace vegetarianism, many cases veganism, they embrace yoga, meditation. People like Swami Vivekananda, Paramahamsa Yogananda, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, and so many, B.K.S. Iyengar, Krishnamacharya, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Swami Chinmayananda, and our own time, Sadhguru Jaggi Vasudev, and Sri Ravi Shankarji, and so on. What they have done is they have prepared the environment to be more and more receptive to Hindu ideas and thought. So, why not? There can be a moment in time when Panchanga can become a legitimate tool in the US environments.
If I may add here, since you mentioned all the wonderful names, I'm a TM practitioner, follower of Maharishi Mahesh Yogi Ji, and I'm delighted to inform and share with you all that people who are part of the TM movement here, you should see how devoted they are. I'm not saying that they're so devoted. They observe Akshaya Tritiya and Guru Purnima in the manner that it was intended to be. And, believe it or not, it is It is fascinating. There are 2 TM centers in Wall Street area, and people from all the leading, I won't name names, but all the leading investment banking community on World Bank, on Wall Street, they go there to meditate either before or after their work. There is a definite acceptance of our way of life. And that's what is critical for us to advance it. I mean, let's give credit to where it belongs. Will Smith, in a 5-minute video, he gave his moment of awakening about Bhagavad Gita in his talk with Guruji. And then he says, oh my, that's the part when I got to understand Bhagavad Gita, because that enlightenment came to me by reading that text and the explanation that was given. So we have to take the proactive first step. It's already there. You are very right, Kalyanji, that in the West there is a great acceptance of things that we are and things we do. I have been told by many American friends of mine, why the hell don't you tell us about yourselves? So I'm not talking about the extremes on the either side. But if we don't take the first step, why would they care to find out? Then they've established their own thing.
Well, all I think of this SBNR business is that thing. I think entire Sanatana Dharma can be classified as SBNR.
Yes.
Right.
Don't you think?
Yeah.
That's a very good idea, Sanjay ji. Maybe we should define it to the West. Sanatan Dharma is nothing else but spiritual, not religious.
Yeah. Especially when the term religious, is a Western term. It's
Yes.
it's not our word at all.
Yes, and it's one book, one prophet
Yeah.
kind of a situation. We have no books, no prophets. We are spiritual, not religious.
We have many books, many prophets, Sanjay ji.
Right.
Yes.
We have the possibility of new prophets in any
That's
given
Swami
generation.
Vivekananda said that each one of us has the potential to be the
That's
Ishwar.
true. Absolutely.
And not just that, we have not a book, but a library.
A whole library. So
Whole library.
the spiritual productiveness of the civilization has been extraordinary, continues to be extraordinary, and it needs an academic dimension to combat some of the problems caused by a westernized academic approach. Maybe there will come a time when the Western academia also will change and its own methods and approaches. But we are at the early stages of that journey.
Okay, next question. Rishi, Guruji, sorry, joined late. SDG, nice hairstyle. Well, that's a forced hairstyle. I'll tell you later why. VJG, I believe that Sanatanis, knowing their Vedas and Philos, are by default highly qualified. Degrees are self-certification by West.
West too, they're productive.
I don't understand the last part.
In any case, it's not a question. It's a
It is
comment.
a statement, and
It's a statement. It's
yeah,
a
yeah.
statement. So we can take it as a statement and move on. Thank you, Rishiji, for this. Next. Rishi, VJG, one more parting jig during Navratri. We Hindus ensure that our temples shout at loudest from Fajr to Isha ki namaz, even during Asurakal 3 a.m.
I applaud
Thank
you
you.
for coming up with such wit and wisdom. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Don't call it a jig. It's wit and wisdom.
Pappu Hu Akbar. Wow. Pappu can start Pappu Ilahi or something like that. Dine Pappu. Next comic, Superman is going to be bisexual. Your thoughts? And on that, I had an idea today. I was about to tweet, so I think I might as well share here. That you are allowed to self-identify as male or female. How about allowing people to self-identify as animals and birds? Will that be the right progression in the woke philosophy.
Sanjay ji, this is brilliant. I'll tell you, we must do a session on this one actually, because we look down upon animals, but we are all happy when somebody calls you look like a tiger or you are mighty like an elephant. You know, you gallop like a horse. We like all the attributes of animals, but we don't want to be called an animal. Go figure that out.
No. We just allow choice.
Choice.
Next. Rishi Ji Gurujan, a thought here: had not British colonized USA, would Americans have adopted Sanatana more openly, and all their tribes are still called Indians? Well, don't
No.
don't
Not at all.
despair. They are adopting Sanatana more even now. So
Yeah.
why worry?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the thing is, the British, had the British not colonized USA, when you say Americans, I think they are referring to American Indians, probably the Native Americans. That is
Right.
Right.
have adopted Sanatana. Yeah, I mean, they got the name Indians because Columbus happened to be looking for India when he
Yeah.
found America,
Right.
right? And Columbus happened to be looking for India because the land route got blocked in Turkey, right? When the whole Constantinople fell and became Istanbul, around that time there needed to be a different route, and so these people got the name American Indians. But their culture is very similar to ours, actually. Very nature oriented, and it's very tragic. They have all been completely destroyed and pushed into reservations, so that they exist. If they can keep their culture, but as long as you remain in a kind of an enclosure where you don't come out and mingle with mainstream society. So it's one of the great tragedies of this Western expansionism, that civilization got completely annihilated.
Okay, next one. वोहरा कमेटी पे एक वीडियो बनाइए भूत वर्तमान फ्यूचर. अप्रोप्रिएट ओकेजन होगा तो बनाएंगे ऋषि जी. Next. Rishi again, I meant to say West use degrees to show they are productive and the same got inculcated. Okay, thank you for the clarification.
It was not about being productive. It was more towards establishing credentials. The US has a very beautiful word. So long as you are per law, you can kill anybody. They have a use the word called legit. There's no ethics and moral there.
Oh, well, law has its own theological dimensions.
Correct.
Pallavi Barve, thanks for having Kalyanji of HUA on your show. I am a student of MA Sanskrit at HUA. They're doing great work.
Wow.
Thank
That's
you,
nice.
Pallavi ji. Thank you
so
for telling
much.
that to us. Swapnil R, if there are any plans of opening a university in America, requesting you all to also create affiliations in India as well. There is more demand created and people get attracted to it. I own a small training institution and have planned to expand. Would like to see Indic topics being promoted and taught. Thank you.
Yeah. So may I take that and add something? We are absolutely open to partnerships, MOUs with India-based institutions, where we open up our courses and programs for India-based students. Number one, we welcome such associations. We already have begun with a few associations, and we will add more. We are also offering a deeply discounted price for our courses for students from Bharat and the surrounding countries. So students in Bharat, Nepal, Bangladesh, even Pakistan, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, etc. They can take advantage of deeply discounted pricing through scholarships at Hindu University of America. And this is a growing partnership, and hopefully we would like to see the emergence of Hindu studies within Bharat itself more and more and more. So there are more mainstream acceptance of Hindu studies as a legitimate, respectable discipline. You know, I'm detecting a tone here which says, you know, somehow the degree that the West offers is an instrument of, you know, assuming a position of authority, meaning the appropriation of authority. But the same thing can be used as a reappropriation of authority too. And you know, because we've embraced so many Western institutions, we can take the instrument of the doctoral degree and appropriate it for the Hindu, uh, uh, you know, cause more generally. It's possible. That we haven't done it so far, you know, and we have instead created an environment within Bharat that is hostile to that possibility. You know, need not constrain us forever and ever after. You know, I think there needs to be an increasing awakening to the possibility that we can reacquire the epistemic authority to speak for ourselves, about ourselves.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Next question. Now questions pouring in suddenly. Pramod Parke, Encyclopedia, most of the content demeaning India to the extent of fragmenting nation as Yugoslavia with respect to Sikh community, multi-ethnic. How to counter?
Yeah.
Vibhuti ji, that's your baby.
I think Kalyanji was anxious to say that. Go ahead, Kalyanji.
Yeah, so this is a great example of exactly the point that we were discussing earlier. You know, see, if you go to you know, let me take the example of a Wikipedia. Now, today Wikipedia has become like a global standard to go get some preliminary knowledge. And if we go and look up something on Hindu, something related to the Hindu world, and you are immediately offended by the demeaning way in which something has been written about the Hindu world on Wikipedia, can you correct it? Okay, here is the problem. Okay, the gatekeepers of Wikipedia will immediately demand what your credentials are, what is your authority with which you speak, you know, and unless you are able to offer a citation, you know, show your doctoral degree and cite a 3, 4, 5 different references to make a point, they will not accept the correction. So when you ask the question, how do you counter it? How to counter? See, the countering has been blocked with this by this gatekeeping method called you had to have a PhD and you had to be able to cite respectable publications. So all the more important, you know. Otherwise, you know, we are left outside the Kurukshetra. You know, you're left outside. You're kind of sitting outside trying to counter something, and we are not able to gain entry into the primary Maidan, if you will, where the contest of ideas is taking place.
And that's where
Right.
the importance of institutional building comes about.
right.
We have to have a contesting. Why Wikipedia? Why not have Hindupedia? I mean, let's do that. Let's kind of put up our own, you know, encyclopedic reference point.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
Hindupedia, Vibhuti ji. So Hindupedia is a first step.
Yeah.
Okay. See, there is something called Hindupedia, by the way. Okay, and Hindupedia, by their own premise and imagination, they do not impose a constraint called you have to have a PhD, and you have to be able to cite respectable sources, etc.
No, we will tell them that you have to have HUA degree to.
No, we're not there yet. Okay, but you know, we not only need Hindupedia and Dharma Wiki, but we also need the ability to go back to Wikipedia and change it fundamentally as per their own rules of the game. Many of the rules of the see, we play cricket today. Cricket is so popular in India. It's not our game. It's a British game. They invented it. They played it over 5 days. They said this is how Test cricket is played. We have completely embraced the game. So all I'm saying is, let us embrace the standard that they have set, and with which they gatekeep these spaces, with which they manage to put a fence around it and say Hindus not allowed in this space because why? You don't have a PhD. Let us fix that problem and gain entry into that academic space so that there can be a free contest of ideas. Let the ideas stand in juxtaposition to each other, and may they then create their own dynamic in a common world of ideas. That would be very difficult as long as we are confined in the margins outside the academia, stuck in our mandirs and on social media and so on. The rigorous knowledge building and capacity building is hard to do without a substantial institution like in the University of America, as per the standards and methods and thresholds that the West has established.
Right. Next. Poonam Abhi ji. Namaste, Sri Vijay and Dr. KV. I do self-identify my gender, but animals ना बाबा. कोई गाय बकरी मुर्गी समझ के खा जाएगा तो आप गाय मुर्गी का क्यों सेल्फ आइडेंटिफाई करती हैं?
Poonam Abhi ji,
सेल्फ
if I
आइडेंटिफाई एज अ
say,
टाइग्रेस, ये हमें मंजूर नहीं.
or otherwise, if you will be very happy to be called Mrignayani. Thank you, Poonam ji.
Okay, next. Ashish, Namaskar. Diversity and understanding the Hindu way of living is a strength, or do we have a threat of fading Hindu beliefs? It is obviously a strength.
Yeah.
You've got to understand the frameworks. That's
Yeah.
what we were talking about, if you heard
Absolutely.
the earlier questions.
Yeah. So the diversity, the radical embrace of a plurality of ways of understanding ourselves, understanding the world, understanding the cosmos, the Jiva, the Jagat, and Ishvara. The diversity is a tremendous strength of Sanatana Dharma. But underlying that diversity, apparent diversity, there is a common foundation, and we should also understand that. And when we get access to the building blocks of that common foundation, then we can fully comprehend both the common foundations and the diversity, and we'll be better prepared to deal with the challenges thrown our way.
Next. Vandana Patel ji, thank you.
Thank you.
Infidel Insight. Will JD US take up Panchang project in collaboration with Native Americans and Rajiv Malhotra or Aditya Satsangi? Vibhuti ji, your baby.
We are always open to changing the narrative. That is our purpose being here. And I'm happy to tell you that since you mentioned the name Aditya Satsangi, I'm doing a show with him on Sunday, which I would urge all of the viewers to watch, where we are making a critical examination of critical race theory, or is it a camouflage of critical faith theory? So do come and watch. We are working in those directions. And, I will tell you something very simple thing, that in Maharishi Mahesh Yogi movement, I had mentioned to you that they observe even our entities called Akshaya Tritiya and, things like that, Guru Purnima, but they are so strong believers in astrology. One of the siddhas of TM movement wanted to do some business arrangement with me. before he did that, he said, "Can we match our horoscope?" So he did a horoscope match. And he said to me, "Vibhuti, let's remain friends because our horoscopes don't match."
It's wonderful.
Yeah. So, but the important part is here is that I know a cardiac surgeon in California who was an ultimate believer in astrology. And I asked him, "How come you believe in astrology?" And he made a very important, poignant observation. He says, somewhere along the line, it has never become a science. It's all about studying it. I could go wrong in my application of my surgical instruments. Doesn't make me a failure. But astrology, somewhere along the line, remained a quackery. But I'm able to read the stars. And I know there was a very specific purpose for that when he told me to help him in a scenario where he had seen his horoscope and said he was going to be sued for $20 million for a surgery that he had done 5 years ago. Point of the matter is, things, if done properly, there are doctors and then there are quacks. And there are doctors and there are gurus who treat us with, they never had MBBS degrees to treat us earlier, but didn't mean that there was no good health around at that time. Thank you.
Next. Rishi, Columbus should have told Native Americans that your roots are in India. What a historical chance missed. Okay. Next. Harish Vakuryal Patram Pushpam. Thank you, Harishi. Harishi again, sir, I am a core tech guy from 18 years. Creating a Hindupedia would require 100 times more server capacity on Wiki, unless Modi gives the PLI scheme.
Well, everything needs money.
Should be eligible under PLI. Why not?
Yeah.
No, but creating Hindupedia, more than requiring server capacity, requires minds, requires knowledgeable minds to come together and participate. I mean, the server capacity is a mere detail, we need to create many platforms. Hindupedia is one, Dharmawiki is one, yeah. But server capacity is available on the cloud nowadays, so it should not constrain us at all. It is the intellectual capacity that we are more worried about than server capacity.
Right. Next. I think we'll have to go a little faster.
Yeah.
Because there's too many questions have come. Rajneesh Chan, 48 years old, unmarried. Oh, I thought it was a matrimonial. I have done a decade-long research on decoding spirituality, psychologically, logically, scientifically. My qualification is MBA. I have no qualification in psychology, but all intellectuals rejects even hearing me, just because I don't have so-called degree in psychology. They say, how do you claim yourself as authority? How to break this illusion? Take a degree from Hindu University. Simple.
Take a degree and perhaps write a book.
Yeah.
Write a book. Once you have written a book, then people want to hear you say that. You will have platforms to explain about it. Why are you going around selling yourself? Let them come and buy your thoughts. So write a book.
Right. My book just crossed 15,000 copies.
There you go. And you don't have a PhD for that, right?
Poonam Abhi, advice taken, STN Vijayji will include Rakta Bija Sangharini and Mahishasura Mardini. That's wonderful, no? Mriganayani. Oh, that I take as a compliment. Any more suggestions?
Hansani Jaisi Chal.
No, this is called Gajagavini.
Gajagavini.
Next. Okay, so that brings us to the end of this wonderful session. Thank you, Kalyan Viswanathan ji. Thank you, Vibhuti ji. Wonderful having you here, and thank you all viewers. Jai Hind, Vande Mataram.
Jai Hind and Vande Mataram. Kalyan ji, thank you very much from my side once again, and we'll meet again.
Wonderful. And Jai Hind and Vande Mataram to you all too. Thank you. Namaskar. Bye-bye.
Press the bell icon on YouTube and don't miss another update.